So what, I was just invisible now? That's what I kept asking myself last week when I got back from the ER and realized no one, not one single person had called, texted, or even freaking noticed I was missing for 3 whole days. You know what was waiting for me on the kitchen counter, though? A paper plate wrapped in cling film, big block letters scribbled across the top. For Max, Max is the family dog, not me, not Ethan. Max? And you better believe I stood there like WTF, staring at it like maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Rewind to a week before that mess. I was busting my ass working back-to-back shifts at the coffee shop in Montrose, trying to juggle my EMT internship at the city hospital. Houston's no joke in November, hot and muggy, 1 second freezing the next. I was living on caffeine protein bars and cheap ramen. My stomach had been feeling off for a while, but I thought it was just stress. You know how you push through pain because you don't have time to deal with it? Yeah, that was me. Until I collapsed while stocking the cold brew syrup shelf. Literally just dropped. Woke up with my supervisor hovering over me and EMTs checking my pulse. Irony, I was training to be one of them. They rushed me to the hospital where I interned. Super embarrassing, by the way. I got admitted overnight, turned out I had a bleeding ulcer. The doctor said if I'd waited another couple days, it could have been fatal. That got me. Like, really got me. Because damn, I almost died and nobody even noticed. They kept me for monitoring, gave me fluids, scheduled an endoscopy, stuck me on ulcer meds, told me I wasn't allowed to lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. I had 20% battery left on my phone when I got in. I fired off a single text to the family group chat. Hey, in hospital, stomach ulcer, staying overnight, will update when out. Then my phone died. No charger, just silence. I didn't panic. At first, I figured anyone would follow up, maybe check if I was okay or ask when I'd be home. Not a damn peep. So 3 days later, I got discharged on Thanksgiving evening, stomach still aching, arms bruised from IV lines. And I took an Uber back to the place I'd called home since my mom passed away when I was 12. My Uncle Rick took me in after she died, but he was always kind of distant, more about providing a roof than being a parent. I didn't have anywhere else to go. That night, all I wanted was to sit down, maybe catch the last bit of dinner, feel like part of something. Dumb hope. I opened the front door. Empty living room. I heard laughing in the backyard, wine glasses, clinking music, playing, people cracking up. I limped into the kitchen, hungry as hell. That's when I saw the plate. It was like someone punched me in the chest. There was food, yeah, but the kind of scraps you'd toss together when you're trying to be polite to a dog. Sweet potatoes, a chunk of turkey, maybe some stuffing, all labeled for Max. My name wasn't anywhere in the fridge. Nothing in the group chat. No plate marked Ethan, no card, no sorry you missed dinner, no blanket on the couch. Just that damn plate for the dog. I wasn't just forgotten. I was deleted. I walked down the hall to my room, heart pounding with some kind of combo of rage, sadness, and disbelief. My room. It wasn't even a room anymore. It was storage. Literal boxes stacked where my bed used to be. Christmas decorations. Uncle Rick's golf gear. Random crap. My pillow was gone. My suitcase shoved in a corner like I was already out. Like they'd started moving me out before I was even done healing. I couldn't breathe. I backed out, went back to the kitchen, sat at the table with a packet of hospital saltines in one hand, the dog's plate still in my eye line, and just stared. Nobody came in. 3 hours later, I left a sticky note on the fridge. Just 5 words. Next time, feed the dog yourself. Then I grabbed my bag, walked out, and didn't look back. I caught the late bus to the university library. It's open 24/7 during finals. And there's this little corner near the vending machines where no one bothers you. I sat there for hours, curled up with my backpack like a pillow, half-eaten saltine in my mouth, still wearing the damn hospital bracelet. Used the public charging station to power up my phone and saw my text still sitting in the family group chat. Timestamped, sent, seen, sandwiched between memes, pie photos, and a video of my cousin Alan doing a TikTok dance with a wine bottle. Not one response, not even a heart react. I wasn't just forgotten. I was ignored on purpose. That night, I booked a room in campus housing using a leftover dorm credit. Crappy cold-stained mattress. But it was mine. The silence was brutal, yeah. But at least it was honest. No pretending. And then this morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls, 2 unknown numbers, one from Uncle Rick, and a single text from my cousin Jenna. What the hell did you say? He's crying in the driveway. I blinked at the screen. Crying. What was he crying about? The joke didn't land. The dog plate wasn't funny anymore. Because his forgotten ward left a sticky note instead of pretending to laugh it off. Screw that. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I just walked to the 24-hour diner down the block, ordered dry toast, no butter. My stomach still felt like it was lined with sandpaper, but I needed something. That's when I saw Uncle Rick's truck pull into the lot. I saw him through the diner window. Uncle Rick in his faded Astros cap and 2 white sneakers stepping out of his big-ass truck like he owned the whole parking lot. No jacket. Just a hoodie and that familiar look like someone told him to come here and fix a leaky faucet. Not check on the kid who used to call him family. I didn't move. I just stared at my toast and stirred my black coffee with the tiny straw. My stomach was flipping not from nerves, but from meds and saltines, and the hollow ache of not being missed. Rick came inside, scanned the place, locked eyes with me, and walked over like we were meeting for a late-night poker game. He slid into the booth across from me without saying anything. No, hey. No, how are you feeling? Just silence and a grunt. Then finally he goes, I saw the note. Cool, gold star, you read 5 words on a fridge. I didn't say anything. He kept going. The plate wasn't meant for you. Alan thought it'd be funny. It was for Max. Just a dumb joke. I looked at him and raised an eyebrow. You think that makes it better? I asked, voice flat. He blinked like I'd just spoken French. We didn't know you were in the hospital. I swear, nobody saw your message. I pulled out my phone, opened the chat, turned it so he could see the timestamp. There, right between your photo of the turkey and Aunt Bev's rant about dry stuffing. He looked at the screen for a second like it was a bomb, then back at me. It got buried, I guess. I laughed once, loud enough for the waitress to glance over. So did I, apparently. He rubbed his temples. I don't know what you want me to say, Ethan. Things have been hectic. We didn't mean to forget about you. Forget I snapped? Dude, my bed is gone. My room's storage now. You started moving me out before I even came back. He looked down. That told me everything. He knew. He'd planned it. We thought you were moving back to campus for good, he muttered. You've been distant. Because nobody ever noticed when I was there, I shot back. He looked up again. And for the first time, I saw it. The twitch in his jaw, the guilt in his eyes. But I wasn't there to hand out forgiveness like mints. I was tired, worn down to threadbare edges. I almost died, I said, voice lower now. 3 days in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms, alone. And the only person who talked to me was a nurse named Jess and a social worker who asked me why my emergency contact never showed up. Know what she found out? He didn't answer, he just waited. She looked into it, I said. Turns out, you never officially filed the guardianship paperwork after my mom died. All those years, Rick, you weren't even legally responsible for me. He blinked. What? I nodded. So when they tried to call my emergency contact, it wasn't valid. Because technically, I didn't have one. He leaned back like I'd slapped him. That's not possible, I signed. No, you said you would, but you didn't. And now I'm 23, but for 3 days, I was a ghost in the system. And no one, not even the guy who raised me, noticed. He went quiet, real quiet. And for the first time, he looked small, like a man who just realized his whole house was built on sand. I thought I did enough, he finally said. I kept the lights on, got you through high school, paid for your textbooks. Yeah, I said, you did all the minimums. But love presents, basic human decency that never made the checklist. We sat there for a while, me staring out the window, him staring into his lap like he was trying to swallow a live wire. Then he said the worst possible thing he could have said. You know we still set a place for you? I turned my head slowly, like a horror movie villain. You set a place for me. Was it next to the damn dog? He flinched. That hit. Good. I didn't come here to yell, I said, voice calm again. I came because a woman in a cardigan and glasses sat next to my hospital bed and said, "Honey, I think you need to talk to someone about your living situation." And for the first time in years, I felt seen. That lady gave me more comfort in 5 minutes than this whole house has in 5 years. He looked like he wanted to say something. I didn't let him. "You know what else she gave me?" I asked. "The number for a legal aid group. They helped me apply for housing, helped me claim independence, real legal independence." His jaw tightened. "You're cutting us off." "I'm cutting off the silence," I said. "I'm done being the guy who gets fed after the dog." He nodded once. It was a slow, defeated kind of nod, like a man watching the last bridge burn and knowing he lit the match with his own damn hand. We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. He just got up and left truck tires crunching against gravel as he pulled out of the lot. I stayed. Ordered another coffee. Let the bitterness soak my tongue. Later that night, Jenna texted again. "He told everyone you're mad, said you embarrassed him." Cool, he should be embarrassed. I didn't reply. A day after that diner showdown, the family group chat blew up like someone dropped a match in gasoline. Messages were flying, half of them trying to act like nothing happened, the other half full-on damage control. My cousin Jenna sent a long-ass paragraph about how everyone was just distracted and how Alan was only trying to make a funny TikTok. Screw Alan and his dog dinner content. The whole vibe. Like I had overreacted to a minor thing. Like I wasn't 3 days in a hospital bed with a bleeding stomach while they were passing around pumpkin pie. No one said, "Are you okay?" No one asked, "Do you need anything?" Just, you could have said something. I did jackasses scroll up. 2 days went by. I stayed in my tiny dorm room with the busted heater and moldy windows and figured out how to live on applesauce oatmeal and those awkward shelf-stable meal kits from the student food pantry. It sucked. But weirdly, it also felt peaceful. Like at least I wasn't being ignored in plain sight anymore. I had solitude, not invisibility. Big difference. That Friday night, I turned off my phone and didn't turn it back on until Sunday morning. When I did, there was a voicemail from Uncle Rick. Long one. His voice all gruff and fake calm, like he was reading from a script. Something about miscommunication and hoping we can reset. Reset? This wasn't Mario Kart. You don't hit a button and undo a decade of emotional neglect. Jenna had texted again too. "Just so you know, we thought you were staying on campus for break. No one expected you home." Which, okay, maybe that was true. Maybe they didn't expect me. But here's the kicker, I lived there for 11 years. That house was supposed to be mine too, and no one noticed I was gone. Not once. My roommate from freshman year, who I barely talk to anymore, reached out and offered me her sister's old studio apartment above a laundromat downtown. I took it. No furniture, no AC, paper-thin walls, but it was mine. Mine. I didn't have to earn space. Didn't have to keep quiet to not be in the way. I could breathe there. A week later, I wrote one final message in the group chat. No drama, no rage, just facts. "Hey, got a new place. I'm okay, stepping out of this group. If anyone wants to actually check in, you know where to find me. You didn't lose me, you just never kept me." Left the chat. Muted every number except Jenna's and weirdly Aunt Bev. She once told me I made the best scrambled eggs in the family. That stuck for some reason. The next morning, Uncle Rick changed the group chat name from Fam Bam to Thanksgiving Archive 2023. No explanation. Just renamed it like it was a Dropbox folder. Like I was a deleted file they didn't want to talk about, but didn't want to fully erase either. Fine, archive me. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop, found a used desk on Craigslist for $20, and used my emergency aid check to buy the cheapest mattress in Houston. No frame, just foam on the floor. Still slept better than I had in years. One day I went through my old box of stuff, school awards, random trinkets, a photo strip from my middle school carnival, found a card from my mom. It was bent and yellowed, but her handwriting hit me like a gut punch. "You are not hard to love. Don't let the world convince you otherwise." I put that on the fridge with a magnet. First thing that went up in the apartment, right next to a sticky note that just said, "Not invisible anymore." About 2 weeks in, I got a text from Jenna. "Can we talk no pressure, just coffee?" I ignored it. Then she texted again the next day. I didn't know, I really didn't. I sighed, stared at my screen for a solid minute, then typed, "You didn't look either." No reply after that. The group chat stayed quiet, like awkward silence at a dinner table after someone drops the truth too hard. I was starting to get used to the silence. It wasn't cruel, it was clean. No passive-aggressive G's, no half-hearted memes, just stillness. Then one night, I was folding laundry in my freezing little apartment when someone knocked. I peeked out the curtain and damn near dropped my basket. It was Aunt Bev, holding a grocery bag and what looked like a freaking space heater. I opened the door slowly. Hey. She smiled a little sheepish. "You look cold. Thought you could use this." Inside the bag, apples, bananas, and a container of something homemade looked like soup. She handed it over. "I don't expect anything. I just should have noticed too." I didn't say anything. I let her put the bag down and leave. No long speech, no guilt trip, just a quiet, weird moment where someone showed up. Maybe not perfect, but better than a dog plate. 3 days after Aunt Bev brought the soup and left without drama, I caved and tasted it. Lentils, carrots, soft potato chunks, thick, warm, and not from a can. It was good. Like someone actually gave a crap while making it. And that pissed me off even more. Because where was this energy when I was sitting in that house all those years? Where was this warmth when I was breaking apart inside, getting good grades, staying out of trouble? Being the easy kid because I thought that would make me visible. The soup felt like a tiny apology. The kind you don't trust at first because it comes way too late. Anyway, the next day, Jenna showed up. No text warning, just a knock on my door and there she was, hood up, makeup smudged, holding 2 coffees and looking nervous as hell. "I know you're probably gonna slam the door in my face," she said. "But can I just sit for a bit?" I didn't say anything, just opened the door wider. We sat on the floor backs against the wall sipping lukewarm lattes because I didn't own chairs yet. The silence was heavy but not angry, just tired. "I read the group chat again," she said finally. "Your message was right there, like literally right there. I don't know how I missed it. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I just didn't want to break the vibe." I looked at her. "So you kept the vibe alive while I was throwing up blood into a hospital sink." She flinched. I know. I let that hang. She took a breath. "Uncle Rick told everyone you were mad because of some old family drama. He didn't say anything about the hospital. He made it sound like you were just being sensitive again." There it was, sensitive. The word they always used when I had feelings, when I noticed the shit they brushed under the rug, when I didn't laugh at being the family's ghost. "I didn't come here to defend him," she added quickly. "I just needed you to know, I don't think you're crazy or dramatic. I think you're right." I didn't expect that, not from her. Then she said the line that cracked something in me. "You were always the quiet one. We all figured you were fine, you didn't ask for much." I laughed, one of those ugly, bitter ones that escapes before you can stop it. "Yeah." "And you all mistook silence for comfort. Thought being low maintenance meant I didn't have needs." "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked down at my chipped mug. "It's not just about the plate, Jen. It's about being the leftover." She didn't respond, just stared at her coffee like maybe it had answers. Then I asked, "Why'd you really come?" She hesitated. "Because everyone's trying to pretend nothing happened. They're planning Christmas like it's fine, and it's not, and I couldn't stand it." I nodded. That tracked. "I wanted to give you something," she said, digging into her bag. She pulled out a photo, a printout of a picture I hadn't seen before. It was from when we were kids. Me and my mom at one of her last birthdays before she passed. I had frosting on my nose. She was laughing. Not the quiet, tired laugh I remembered from when she was sick. This was a full, eyes-crinkled, head-back laugh. Pure joy. "I found it in an old album at Uncle Rick's," Jenna said. "It had fallen behind the shelf. I thought, maybe it belonged with you." I took it with shaking hands. Didn't cry, just stared. That night after she left, I taped it above my bed. Right under the sticky note, not invisible anymore. It still hurt. The loneliness, the abandonment, the casual cruelty of being the kid no one bothered to check on. But that picture reminded me that once I had someone who saw me, who laughed with me, who didn't need a dog plate to prove I mattered. The next morning, I texted Aunt Bev. "Soup was great, thank you." She replied in 5 seconds. "Next time I'll bring cornbread and chairs." The message made me smile. It wasn't a fix, but it was something. A week passed, then another, then a knock. Uncle Rick. I opened the door just a crack. He looked tired. No Astros cap, just a grocery bag in one hand, a manila envelope in the other. "I know I don't deserve your time," he said, "but I've been doing some paperwork." I raised an eyebrow. "I talked to legal aid," he added. "Signed the forms, officially filed." Not that it matters anymore, but I should have done it years ago. I know that now. He held out the envelope. I didn't take it. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I just want you to know I see it now. I saw the plate. I saw your room. I saw what we did." I stared at him, and I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking for the first time. Not just for that week, for all of it. I still didn't take the envelope. I don't live there anymore. "I know," he said quietly, "but I'd like to visit when you're ready." I closed the door without answering. It took me 4 days to even open the envelope Uncle Rick left. I tossed it on my tiny kitchen counter, right next to a bag of off-brand cereal and a cracked mug I found at Goodwill. I walked past it every day, like it was some sleeping animal I didn't want to wake up. But on the 5th night, cold, loud with wind rattling the windows, I caved. Inside was the finalized guardianship paperwork. Retroactively signed, filed, stamped. Too late to matter legally, but not symbolically. And there was a photo too, one from last year's Thanksgiving. I wasn't in it. Just Rick, Allen, Jenna, Bev, even Max. Someone had scribbled names on the back, all of them, except one. This time he'd added mine. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just felt still. Later that week, I walked to the corner laundromat with a borrowed rolling cart and quarters jangling in a jar. In the waiting area, I sat next to this old guy folding shirts, and he looked over at me and said, "You live upstairs?" I nodded. "Nice place." "Nope," I said, "but it's mine." That felt good to say out loud. I started building a life piece by piece. The studio got a lamp, then a secondhand bookshelf, a corkboard over the mattress. First thing pinned, that photo of my mom laughing. Second thing, the sticky note that started all of it. Not invisible anymore. I got a text from Aunt Bev a week later. "I'm making chili this weekend. You want in just us?" I replied, "Yeah, that'd be nice." No big family spread, no dog plates, just soup and cornbread and maybe a beer on the porch. On Sunday, I brought folding chairs. She smiled when I walked up. "Look who remembered to show up." I laughed. Look who remembered I existed. We didn't talk much about the Thanksgiving mess, just life, work, school, what Max was up to. It was easy, real, quiet. That night, I sat in my apartment with my windows open and the heater buzzing and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. I didn't forgive Rick. Not really, but I let the bitterness go. Not for him, for me. Carrying that anger was like dragging around a suitcase full of rocks. I didn't want it anymore. The next time I saw Jenna, she brought a tray of cupcakes and a candle shaped like a 1. "What's that for?" I asked. She grinned. 1 month of surviving solo. 1 month of not letting people walk all over you. I shook my head, but I kept the candle. Put it on my windowsill. Then one night, deep into finals week, I passed by my fridge and saw it a paper plate. Someone from the building had left it outside my door. Thanksgiving leftovers. On it, someone had written in Sharpie for Ethan, "You matter." No one signed it. I didn't need to know who. That plate. It was real. This time my name was on it. So I peeled back the plastic, grabbed a fork, and sat by the window with my legs tucked up, watching the streetlights flicker, the city breathe, and let myself feel it all. Not revenge, not triumph, not anger, just finally being seen. And honestly, that was enough. Story 2. My son spoke at my retirement celebration and thanked me for finally moving aside. I refrained from arguing. I just got up and declared that I had sold the family business, but not to him. Hi there! We're putting a lot of effort into reaching our first 1,000 subscribers. Click the subscribe button if you enjoy real heartfelt stories. You won't realize how much it helps. Let's begin the narrative now. The universe splits in two for every man at some point in his life, the life you believe to be yours. and the real one you were living. It happened to me on the evening of my retirement celebration. A room full of folks I had collaborated with for decades. Family members, friends, and former coworkers are drinking cheap champagne while reclining in their plastic chairs. I ought to have felt proud. I ought to have been calm. Rather, I witnessed Jason, my only son, take the microphone, touch it twice, as if he owned it, and declare, "Dad is finally moving aside." Like a stone into a quiet lake, the words fell into the emptiness. No one knew for a moment whether to hold their breath or laugh. Some people laugh uneasily. Helen, my wife, looked down at her lap and became a bright crimson. I sat there feeling the air around me stretch taut like a rubber band on the verge of breaking, blinking slowly. Jason was no longer even acting. I wasn't a father to him. I wasn't a mentor. I was a barrier, something he could finally destroy. What's the worst? I wasn't shocked at all. I believed that I had known for a long time that this day would arrive. I simply never had the courage to acknowledge it. Jason smirked, cleared his throat, and continued as if he hadn't just smacked me across the face in front of 100 people. But really, Dad created something amazing, and now it's time for the next generation to build on it. You are all familiar with me. I have ambitious goals, large concepts. You know Dad's old school, the home was built by him. I will make a tower out of it. He gave the audience a wink as if he had just told the best joke ever. The room echoed with a few more laughter, but they sounded weaker, more forced now. It was felt by everybody. That bitter undertone. Jason's remarks vibrated that inappropriate, harsh sound. I wasn't being celebrated by the man. He was having a party for himself. In his mind, he was celebrating the fact that the old monarch was finally leaving the throne. Squeezing my hands till my knuckles turned white, I folded them in my lap. Paul Hartman, my oldest friend and the company's previous CEO, was standing at the back of the room when I looked at him. Not that he knew precisely what I was about to do, but he gave me a slow knowing. In actuality, Jason was clueless about what was going to happen next. You see, I hadn't worked through recessions, missed anniversaries, and broken my back for the past 40 years, all to give everything to a pampered brat who felt entitled to it. Not after what I'd learned a few months before, anyhow. It was really his burial, but Jason mistakenly believed it was his coronation night. I carefully got up from my chair, sensing that all eyes were fixed on me, the elderly guy, the stepping stone that had been at last moving aside. With another arrogant smile, Jason moved away from the microphone and gestured for me to take his position. The expression on his face, God, he seemed to believe that I was going to knight him or something. Give the flame to someone. God bless his rule. Verify his glitzy little fantasy. I approached the microphone, inhaled deeply, gazed at the multitude of people outside. Some were intrigued, some uneasy, and some had a hunch that something wasn't quite right. I then thanked everyone for attending tonight in the most composed voice I could muster. Seeing so many faces, both new and old, means the world. Like a child on Christmas morning, Jason smiled. I went on, tonight isn't just the celebration of an ending. It's a celebration of a fresh start. Jason nodded wildly, encouraging the audience to continue. My smile was genuine, the type you get when you're aware of a secret. Everything is going to change because of it. For this reason, I'm pleased to declare that the family firm has been sold. The room fell quiet. A pin may have been dropped. The smile on Jason's face froze. Like a mask that no longer fit, it was still partially hanging there. He cracked his voice and said, "Sold. To whom?" After a long, difficult day, I savored the moment like the first drink of fine whiskey as I leaned toward the microphone. To a man who values honesty, commitment, and hard work, someone who understands what it's like to construct something yourself. The color faded from Jason's face. He parted his lips, then shut them again. I opened it once more. On dry land, he appeared to be gasping like a fish. Around the room, you could see the energy changing as interest turned into tension, bewilderment into perplexity, and fear into dread. With instant effect, I straightened up. I have left the firm. Jason is not going to take over. There will be no inheritance, no dynasty, and no transfer. After turning, I eventually let my gaze to fall directly on my son. I didn't speak louder. I didn't have to. Son, the world owes you nothing. I don't either. Suddenly, 40 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice were freed from the avaricious hands that believed they had a right to it. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair, left the microphone dangling softly in the air behind me, and left my own retirement party without turning around. I heard Jason yelling behind me. I didn't pay attention. The chapter was closed previously. You could have such a thought. It's unexpected to drop the bomb at your own retirement celebration. After one insult, an irate elderly guy snapped. Too many. It's never just one item, though. Over the years, there have been several little cutbacks. Some of you take note. Because it hurts too much to acknowledge what they signify, some of you act as though you don't notice. I considered Jason to be my second chance at life when he was born. I was raised in extreme poverty, graduated from high school first in my family, and started Davidson construction from scratch using only 2 credit cards, a corroded vehicle, and several nights spent sleeping on the job site in order to meet deadlines. I promised myself that my child would never have to go through what I had. He would live the best life, have the finest chances, and attend the best schools. And it could have been my first error. Because Jason didn't learn gratitude. It was expected. No, it wasn't. Take a look at what Dad created. Yes, it was. I'm going to inherit this. I was early to see the indications. His conversations with waiters when he believed I wasn't paying attention. The manner he dismissed those who were unable to keep up with his way of life. The way he mocked the company's elderly men. Long before he was born, men had bled for our achievement. They are only stand-ins. Once I heard him say, at a backyard cookout, he was laughing with one of his fraternity friends. Dead weight, awaiting retirement. Similar to my father. It hurt. However, I dismissed it at the moment. Young and arrogant he was. Surely he would get over it, however, he didn't. The entitlement just crystallized as he grew older. Every family vacation, every Thanksgiving meal, the topic of my running things kept coming up in the chat. Not if. When, it wasn't just chatter either. I discovered him doing something that completely changed things 6 months prior to my retirement celebration. Late one evening, I was going over some quarterly reports. Upstairs, Helen was already asleep. A few odd entries caught my attention. I didn't recognize the firms who received the new consultancy fees. I initially believed it to be an error, perhaps a marketing team or an HR business that is outsourced. I hadn't been informed. However, upon closer inspection, I saw that Jason's fingerprints were all over it. In an attempt to arrange a transaction to sell a portion of the business, he had been holding covert meetings with outside investors. Slowly, without my awareness, without my permission, without a single word of dialogue, attempting to sculpt what I have dedicated my entire life to creating, like a turkey during Thanksgiving. I continued to sit at the head of the table and stared at the spreadsheets, emails, and contracts that were prepared behind my back in my study until dawn. It went beyond simple treachery. It was avarice, conceit, and the absolute conviction that he could do anything he pleased. I would simply turn over and give it a blessing. I made the decision that night that Jason would never, ever be allowed to be around me again. I was not going to yell or lose my temper, though. I refused to plead with him to be someone he was obviously not. No, I would defeat him in the same manner that I established the company. Silently, cautiously, and completely. It was time to show Jason how deadly a guy can be when he had nothing left to lose if he felt that I was elderly and in his way. Something changed inside of me after spending that night in my study. I began to look at Jason like a hostile entity behind the walls, and I stopped looking at him like my kid. It's amusing that you bring up a child believing that your role is to shield them from the world you never thought possible. You will have to defend the world from your child. I started jotting down names the following morning after getting a black coffee and a legal paper, and sitting down at the kitchen table. People I had faith in. Those who continue to value hard labor, loyalty, and honor. Paul Harmon was the type of person at the top of the list who wouldn't destroy Davidson Construction at the first opportunity. Paul had slept in the same old trailers, built the same walls with broken hands, and been beside me since the beginning. He remained a good buddy even after retiring a few years ago. That afternoon, I gave him a call. Somewhere outside of town, we met in a diner. The corporation never sent anyone. Cracked leather chairs and old wooden benches. The air was heavy with the stench of cooked bacon. It felt correct, felt sincere. I told Paul everything, and he sat across from me, leaning in and listening silently. Jason. Covert transactions, phony consultancy firms, and utter disregard. Paul simply sat, leaned back and whistled softly when I was done. I always questioned if he was capable of it. I assume you have your response. He made no attempt to soften it. Didn't inform me that I was exaggerating. Didn't provide Jason an explanation. Rather, he spoke something I didn't even realize I wanted to hear. Do you wish to sell? A man I know treats it well. Marcus Vance was his name. A former contractor is now an investor. He used his rough hands to build his own kingdom, not inherited. He had no intention of stealing parts from the business. He wanted to keep it intact, maintain the integrity of the employees working on the projects. The name is proud. While Jason was busy hosting networking events, presenting rebranding concepts to his fraternity friends, and honing his Vision 2030 speech, we worked covertly for the following 3 months. I was moving assets, sorting out ownership arrangements, and making sure the correct documents were filed in the appropriate locations. To ensure that every action property deed, operating agreement, and patent was completely secured, I engaged a lawyer, a quiet, shrewd, and lethal one. Later, not even the suggestion of a lawsuit would affect me. Not once, either. Jason was so preoccupied with organizing the coronation that he failed to notice the guillotine being constructed directly behind him, sitting in the study on certain evenings. The old business portrait on the wall catches my attention. I was standing with the original crew 20 years younger. No elegant boardrooms, no suits. Only pride in our eyes and filth beneath our nails. I wasn't acting spitefully. I was taking this precaution to keep the item we constructed from entirely rotting. Before Jason's string of misfortunes turned into yet another unfulfilled promise. 2 weeks before the retirement party. 2 weeks before Jason's big moment. 2 weeks before he took the mic and stabbed me in the chest. Without realizing he was already bleeding out. The paperwork was completed, the checks were signed, and the future was certain. Betrayal isn't loud, which is a drawback. Not initially. It's silent. 1,000 chances for integrity lost. Till they bury you alive, stacking up. I was already on the other side of a line that Jason was unaware of when he snatched up that microphone at the retirement party and branded me dead weight with that smug little smile. He believed he was striking the last blow. He lost because he was unaware that the conflict was already over. After his speech, I felt like I was being pinned to the ground by the weight of 100 eyeballs. Individuals were bending forward in their seats. The tension was heavy and metallic, and the air smelled like blood. I spoke in a cool, collected, and even courteous tone. I appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. I genuinely said, I'm thankful for every handshake, every deal, and every difficult day that led to a better tomorrow. It's been a lifetime of hard work. With his chest puffed up, Jason stood off to the side of the stage, mentally practicing the moment. The day I was meant to give him the kingdom's keys. I let the quiet to grow, held it long enough to cause itching in the room, then let the hammer fall. That's why I've made the decision to sell Davidson Construction after giving it some thought. The ensuing collective gasp was nearly melodic. It struck Jason like a freight train, and I could feel it. Observed his face lose its color. As if he could physically prevent the words from reaching the audience, he staggered forward with his hand half up. Sold, he let out a bark. It cannot be sold. It's a family enterprise. I own it. I carefully turned my head, absorbing him as if he were a complete stranger. I hardly recognized it. Perhaps he was by that time. I whispered, it was never yours. I owned it, created by my labor, sweat, and sacrifice. I stopped. Give it time to sink in. Jason, you don't inherit character. You deserve it. The room died. Some of the visitors, however, moved uneasily. Helen, my wife, seemed as though she could be ill. The smallest, proudest nod I've ever seen came from Paul, who was standing at the back of the room. Jason stammered and searched for words, but his mind was jumbled by anger. With a shaky finger pointing at my face, he bounded onto the stage. This is not possible. I'm owed by you. I was meant to have this. You made a pledge." I moved away from the microphone, took my time, and looked at his face, observing the fear, the rage, and the complete incredulity. On one point, you're correct. At last I added, "I vowed to defend Davidson Construction against those who would destroy it for their own pride." I moved closer, speaking quietly enough for him to hear what came next. Jason snapped in front of everyone, even if that someone was you. He screamed, "I won't repeat words," and pushed the microphone stand so hard that it fell down, removing all remaining semblance of respect. A few of the visitors began to gather their jackets. Others simply gazed in shock, wide-eyed and stunned. Helen hurried up, grabbed Jason's arm, and tried to pull him back while shouting furiously in his ear. However, he threw her off like a spoiled kid and opened the exit door so forcefully that they banged against the walls. For a long time, he didn't look back. No one shifted. No one said anything. I turned back to the rest of the audience at last, my grin grown thin and kind. I said, "Thank you all for coming. Be careful when driving." And that's it. I left Davidson Construction on my own terms after 40 years of blood and sweat, decades of aspirations, struggles, and little victories that built up to a lifetime. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to burn the bridge to those who would destroy it, not because I was evicted or because I was too old. You would think that Jason would have fled to lick his wounds, accept the loss, and regain his dignity following such a public outburst. Perhaps. However, no. There was one thing that Jason had inherited from me. Stubbornness continues. Sadly, none of the wisdom that was meant to accompany it. I received the first call 2 days after the celebration. It came from my attorney. He sounded almost delighted in the early morning, as the sun was just beginning to peek over the trees outside my window. An injunction was just filed by Jason's attorney. They're saying you're mentally incompetent and that you were forced to sell the business he claimed. I sat looking at my coffee at the kitchen table. Something inside of me becomes really chilly. Not melancholy, not rage. It was just a fatigue that went deeper than bone. My flesh and blood, my own son, attempting to portray me as elderly, to reclaim what he believed was his own. If it weren't so pathetic, it would have been hilarious since Jason didn't know, and his upscale downtown lawyer obviously hadn't informed him that I had been getting ready for this very moment for over 2 years. Long before Jason ever considered challenging me, I had medical records, psychological exams, and cognitive tests signed by some of the state's top doctors, attesting to my complete mental capacity. These documents were dated, notarized, and discreetly filed in sealed envelopes. I wasn't a slithering old idiot fading into obscurity. As a man, I had dedicated my life to creating fortresses rather than fairy tales. Within 48 hours, my attorney submitted a countersuit, moved to reject, make a motion for penalties, motion for reimbursement of legal costs. Jason's case wasn't simply dismissed. The court laughed it off. After the last documents were sealed and stamped, Jason was left with nothing more than a pile of debts that he was unable to pay. Because he was unaware of the second item, all financial ties between Jason and the business were broken as soon as the sale to Mark was completed. No trust money, no voting rights, and no shares, nothing. Even his slick black BMW, which he enjoyed showing off around town, was leased under the company's name, and Marcus saw no reason to continue making payments. Jason stormed into my driveway one afternoon, irate, insisting that I repair it. Somehow I still felt that I owed him. Even now, I still think he could intimidate, shame, or guilt me into rolling over. He yelled about treachery, lineages, and heritage while standing there with his hands balled at his sides. I will allow him to finish. As he became aware that the words were no longer falling anywhere, he saw the last of the fire leave him. The final thing I would ever say to him was then spoken. Jason, you are not my legacy. The homes we constructed, the lives we impacted, and the men that labor next to me, my legacy is that. You made your own decision. Walk it now. I refrained from shoving the door in his face. I didn't yell or become angry. I simply turned around, left him standing on the cracked pavement, and walked back inside my house. A monarch without a realm. A youngster who never understood what a crown was worth. That was our final conversation. It's peculiar. You dedicate your entire life to creating what you believe to be a lasting legacy, a family, or a tale worthy of being told. One day you come to the realization that permanence is really a myth. At night, we remind ourselves to go to sleep. In actuality, everything is subject to change. Whether you're ready or not, everything comes to an end. Things were calmer after Jason abruptly left my life for the final time. Easier. A few months later, I sold the large house. I spent a long time discussing it with Helen. We were both aware that the home was suddenly too large as we sat on the back patio, enjoying coffee and listening to the cicadas. Too many echoes, too many vacant rooms. About an hour outside of the city, we discovered a little cabin near a lake. A big porch, 2 bedrooms, and a crooked old oak tree that leans just enough to give you anxiety during storms are all features. It's flawless. I read in the afternoons, went fishing in the mornings, and walked the dog down the coast in the nights. No quarterly reports, no board meetings. There isn't a tense atmosphere that threatens to explode. Helen's smile widened, laughed more readily, resumed painting. Her behavior in me was something she hadn't done since before Jason was born. At last, I took a deep breath. Sometimes people from the previous firm still phone to see how things are doing. Describe a project that is being built in a new neighborhood, a family relocating to their first residence. A child wrote to express gratitude to Davidson Construction for constructing their favorite baseball field. Marcus fulfilled his promise. He viewed the company as a living being, rather than a mechanism that needed to be dismantled. Every time the old gang tells me a wonderful story, it serves as a reminder that I was right to call. According to what I've heard, Jason attempted to launch his own consulting business. It lasted almost half a year. Burnt through every bridge he hadn't already set on fire. Burned through friends, burned through investors. Word spreads more quickly than ambition. A man whose main talent was entitlement was not someone anybody wanted to work with. I don't despise him. I don't want to hurt him. However, I also don't miss him. There is a type of grief that you can tolerate, not the sort that tears at your heart and rips you from the inside out. The more subdued variety, similar to a gradual tide, retreating from the coast, leaving just a remembrance of moist sand, just a friendly reminder. Sometimes the water glows gold as the sun sets, and the quiet evening chorus of the cicadas begins. I consider the business as I sit on the porch, regarding the young guy I once was, in front of the house that had been partially constructed. I was dreaming of a future that was beyond my grasp, and I'm happy since I fulfilled the commitment that Jason didn't care about the most. To myself, not even to the business. The assurance that even if it meant standing by myself, I would create something valuable and defend it. Because your family isn't blood after all. It's allegiance. It is a mark of honor. In order for the tree as a whole to survive, it is important to know when to let the rotting branches fall. That concludes the tale. You must be one of us if you're still here, so feel free. Press the subscribe button. Every day I release more chaos. Believe me, the story will be told tomorrow. This one is not quite as bad as it is. Story 3. I discovered that my stepson had transferred $90,000 to his true father's name. As a result, I observed the shop collapse and frozen the accounts. Hi there. We're putting a lot of effort into reaching our first 1,000 subscribers. Click the subscribe button if you enjoy real heartfelt stories. You won't realize how much it helps. Let's begin the narrative now. A client questioned me directly, "Is your son's real dad here?" As I stood in the center of the business that I had helped construct from the bottom up. Something broke in my chest at that instant. It was his manner of asking the question, not the subject itself, like he knew something I didn't. Allow me to explain. My name is Mike. As a 47-year-old, I would have told you that I had a strong stepson, a thriving family company, and a wonderful marriage until 3 weeks ago. After 12 years together, my wife Dana and I were proud of her. When I met Jordan, her kid, he was 10 years old. Clever, shy, and skinny child who has a major love with YouTube business channels and shoes. The ghost of his biological father, never present, never made a child support payment, Never made a birthday call. I attended football games and filled in the blanks, taught him how to drive and assisted him with his schoolwork. I wasn't attempting to be a substitute. I simply adored the child as if he were my own. Let's go back to last year. Jordan becomes really excited about starting a shoe resale shop on his 21st birthday. And look, he labored for this one, even though I know most 21-year-olds have stupid notions. Completed the research grant spreadsheets and presented his presentation to me as though I were an investor on Shark Tank. If I fail, at least I'll fail, he added, looking me in the eye. Being aware that you had faith in me. That statement really got to me. I threw myself into it. Dana was a co-signer. To secure the lease, I made the first $20K investment, 40 more for the inventory after that. By the time of the big opening, I had spent about $90,000 of my personal funds. Funds for retirement have increased again. Cash for emergencies is gone. I didn't give a damn. It was for the family. Jordan referred to it as our dream. He stated that he also wanted me to feel as though I had made something, and it felt right for a while. He managed social media and got up early every morning, fulfilled all the duties expected of a young business owner. He was well liked by the customers, even had a feature that day in a local online magazine. The one with the client began similarly to the others. I was delivering a fresh shipment of limited edition Jordans that I had assisted in locating via a former client. While I'm behind the counter, a man in his 30s enters and asks, "Oh, hey, is your son's real dad here?" I froze at the place's owner. He spoke in a casual manner as if he didn't want to offend me. Yet there was a familiar, assured tone to his voice, as if he had met him. I dismissed it with a joke, gave the man his footwear, and went to my car. But I couldn't get that sentence out of my brain. I asked Jordan who else had been visiting the store during supper that evening. For half a second, his gaze shifted to Dana, just a flick. However, I managed to catch it. "Just people from around, you know, some old friends of Mom's." He shrugged. He refused to look into my eyes, and I sensed it instantly. That change in the atmosphere. Only when something is about to fall apart do you sense it. I also began to notice other things. Jordan ceased to show me the money, claimed to have things under control. New inventory invoices are no longer emailed. When I questioned Dana about the business, she became very defensive. One night she remarked, "You should let him handle it. You've already accomplished enough. Keep him from becoming smothered. Smother him. He's walking on a foundation that I constructed. I invested all of my time, money, and faith in him. I was now being advised to take a step back. I nodded without saying anything. Wash the dishes and eat my meal. However, I began to question who was actually in charge of this shop, because I have a feeling it's not the child I reared. And the actual dad tells me something. It's been years since I heard anything about it. Perhaps he's closer than I realize. He's going to have to learn the hard way if that's the case. What would happen if you excluded the one man who truly created the dream? That night I was unable to sleep. I slept next to Dana and listened to her calm, steady breathing, as if nothing had happened, but it was all noisy within my brain. The voice of the consumer continued reverberating. "Dad, this is real, right here." Jordan looked at her as if she had the answers. Her lack of astonishment was evident. I began tugging at the strands. I had access to a few items such as joint documents, certain bank alerts, and past email logins, but I didn't want to get into conspiracy crazy. I looked into the company account. The password had been altered by Jordan. Strange. It's hardly a huge deal, is it? However, we decided that I would oversee the first year's finances so he could concentrate on expansion. I then looked at the LLC documents and the business license that we either submitted together or ought to have done jointly. Lost. I was officially perplexed now. The next morning, I gave our accountant a call. "We've been using this man for years. Amiable middle 60s, extremely meticulous with details. Hey, just checking who's listed as the owner on the business license for Kick's Vault," I said. A pause occurred. "I didn't do the licensing, Mike. I thought you guys took care of things on your own. You didn't know after the initial consultation I believed you to be doing it." He paused once more before saying something that caused my neck to stand on end. 2 months ago, someone filed it, but it wasn't you. Daniel Carter is in charge of it. Daniel Carter, Dana's former partner. Jordan's father by birth. Not much of hanging up the phone comes to mind. I only recall feeling a strange mixture of humiliation and betrayal as I walked outside and sat on the back stairs. Not rage, not melancholy, something colder, as if someone disconnected the sun from my life without even apologizing. Let me clarify. I donated $90,000 to this child, spent evenings looking for potential suppliers, assisted him in creating his complete business plan, and registered the entire enterprise in the name of the guy who had deserted him. For what purpose for a last name? That day I said nothing, not to Dana or to Jordan. However, I mentioned it in passing the following morning, stated that I wanted to know if the company insurance needed to be updated, was curious as to whose name was on file. Jordan stiffened. Dana let out a sigh. "You don't have to worry about that stuff," she remarked, setting down her fork. "It's resolved." When I gently inquired again, Dana gave me a direct look and stated, "Mike, you don't get it. In reality, he is not your son." There was no hesitancy or pretense. Fell into my lap like a brick. I gazed at her. I think my mouth was half open. I bided my time till she walked it back. Describe. Let's say she didn't intend it that way. She didn't. "Indeed, you've been wonderful to him," she continued. "Really?" However, perhaps it's time to take a break. Now let his father get involved. He gets to be a father now, he sees. Now that the job is over, the store has a built-in consumer base and product buzz. I took the chance now. Dana spoke so nonchalantly as if it were only a sensible strategy for transition, as if I were a temporary employee whose contract was over. After slowly nodding and finishing my coffee, I turned to face Jordan, who was unable to turn around. Then, without raising my voice, I said, "All well then, I will no longer be involved." I meant it too. They assumed I was simply moving aside. They were unaware that I was only getting started and that I still had control over the accounts. They believed I had left. Jordan felt a sense of relief. Dana pretended to have recently prevailed in a business custody dispute. However, neither of them understood that I was more than simply the investment. The infrastructure was me. I was in charge of the entire back end when we first began Kick's Vault. Jordan was too young to sign some forms, therefore, the LLC was first officially mine. Vendors provided the inventory. He was designated as an authorized user on the company checking account that I found, which had been created in my name. The cash $90,000 that I saved myself. And I was discreetly keeping complete access while he had been busy claiming to be a CEO and receiving shoutouts on Instagram. Jordan believed that I was unaware of his rerouting, that he registered a new company in his father's name. The problem with attempting to overrule a foundation, however, is this. If the land on which you are building isn't truly yours, the entire apparatus can be brought down with a single lever, and that lever was mine. So I picked up the phone. Keep quiet, once. I started by asking the bank if I could temporarily freeze the account and if it was still operating in my name. "You're still the primary, of course, Mr. Garrison." "Excellent." I then gave the merchant processor a call. They use this service for all payments made at the point of sale. Since it was connected to my kitchen, I only needed to click to stop them from accepting card payments. I then investigated the lease. You know what? As the original owner, I was the renter of record for the property, which was owned by Kick's Vault LLC. Everything they had been constructing. Every shoe sold, every transaction. Each employee was employed. It still passed through the home I constructed. I bided my time till Monday morning was calm. On the week's slowest sales day, I froze the accounts at 7:03 a.m. At 7:15, I stopped the merchant processing. I notified the landlord via email that I was closing because of financial irregularities. I returned home at 9 a.m. and proceeded to prepare breakfast as usual. I didn't block the door. I didn't warn them, and I didn't text. I hoped they would enter and observe what transpired. I desired for them to sample it. That fear, that loss of command, that insight that the guy they discarded like a spare component was the engine's lifeblood. At around 10:42, Dana called, Jordan 3 times after I let it ring. I maintained a level voice the 4th time I picked up. Is there a problem with the shop? Dead quiet. Nothing is functioning. Finally, he said, the payments have decreased. The bank accounts were shut. Not even the personnel can be paid. I feigned a moment of thought. That's odd. It's probably wise to call your biological father. It sounds like an actual owner issue. He remained silent, simply hung up. I sat there and watched the call screen's flickering light go off, and I grinned for the first time in weeks. Kid, you wanted him. You've got him. Hopefully he will be able to unfreeze what he never constructed. Have you ever seen someone attempt to patch a leak by covering it with tape while the entire pipe beneath is rupturing? When I yanked the plug, Jordan was running about like a chicken with its head cut off. Panic on the first day. Day 2. Denial. Day 3. Desperation. They had no idea what had hit them by the quiet of the 4th day. Jordan strolled in on Monday looking confident, and I heard from one of the staff, a wonderful youngster named Ricky, who used to call me Uncle Mike when I helped him obtain the job. He claimed it was just a small technical issue. Their payment terminal was still down by lunchtime. Jordan attempted a bluff when the landlord stopped by for a haphazard inspection after their supplier, a friend of mine whom I had already warned, canceled their delivery. It was unsuccessful. It turns out that when you act like the boss and you are unable to explain why the name on the lease does not match the name on your company license, it is rather unpleasant. Even more amusing is realizing that the person you filed against is still listed on all court documents. I was not even required to be present. I simply waited. One by one, their employees began to leave by Wednesday afternoon. Because the inventory was purchased on Net 30, the shelves were already half empty. Who do you think defaulted? I didn't ask, but Dana looked like she had been sobbing when she got home that evening. Since her brief incident, we hadn't spoken much. His speech isn't actually that of your son. At the table, she took a seat, silent as if she were preparing for something. Then she added, "Don't ruin everything, Mike. I know you're mad." He is only a child. He was wrong. I gave her a glance and remained silent for a short while, simply gazed. Whose store is it? I then inquired. Dana. She winced. I repeated slowly this time. Is it Daniel Carter's or Jordan's? She started to say something, but I interrupted her because it was definitely not mine. I'm not his biological father. Do you recall quiet? She made an effort to shift the conversation, claimed they would work things out, said they would start afresh if Daniel could get a little loan to pay for it. Then I burst out laughing, just beneath my breath, nothing loud, because this Daniel had been going to Jordan for more than 10 years, the same man who left as soon as Dana became pregnant, the man who thought of himself as a parent by accidentally sending a text message once a year on Christmas, and he was meant to save them now. No. Jordan texted me on Thursday afternoon, only a single line. I made a mistake. I ought to have been truthful. Not enough. It's much too late. Later that night, the store's lights went off. Literally, there is no power. The utility payment must have been overlooked by someone as well. To see it for myself, I took one more drive past. The vibrant graffiti-style sign over the door kicks vault was half lit and shattered. No one was in the windows. The dream was dead. There was no foot traffic. And all I needed to do was remove my hand from the wheel. No shouting, no threatening. A silent reset, please. Someone locks you out of your house after you give them the keys. All right. However, don't be shocked when I take back what's rightfully mine and change the locks. When people show you who they are, they say, have faith in them, but you show them the documents when they later try to guilt trip you. Dana asked if we could have a serious talk 3 days after the business closed. We had hardly spoken. I've been doing that strange icy roommate thing where everyone is kind but stoic on the inside. I anticipated what would happen, but I responded, sure. At a bank, we sat across from one another like strangers. She seemed exhausted. Hair up, no makeup, and a sweatshirt that was most likely Jordan's. I no longer felt furious, simply exhausted. She began softly, expressed regret for the way things turned out, that we ought to have talked, that she ought to have handled it better. Then she gave me a classic mic hit. "You're superior than this." I gave her space to speak, allow her to spin this as a miscommunication using every phrase she can think of. "Even I kid you not," she said. "His goal was to please his true father. Boys are like that. I believe he only wished to establish a connection with him. Yes, using my funds." Jordan then arrived. An hour later, he arrived with a box of donuts and that dejected puppy smile that children make when they realize they've made a mistake, but think that sugar would make it better. He didn't even immediately take a seat. He simply lingered in the kitchen before settling in. I suppose I should have anticipated this from a non-blood person. That one struck a different chord. I didn't shout. I didn't answer. I got up, went to my office, opened a drawer, and took out a neatly labeled, indexed, and notarized folder. "Look at it," I replied, passing it to him. It had everything. The initial LLC registration in my name, the bank documents demonstrating the staged transfers of $90,000 from my personal accounts, the merchant services agreement in my name, and the lease executed beneath my LLC. Each and every signature dotted line, every paper trail. Slowly, Jordan flipped through it. Dana peered over his shoulder as this gradual depressing revelation caused her lips to separate. "You believed me to be a wallet?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "The basis was me. You attempted to find a man who didn't construct any of this to take my place. You want me to mend what you damaged?" Now Dana's eyes were fixed on the ground. She whispered, "You have this planned." "No, you did," I said, staring her in the eye. "When you informed me that I wasn't his father. I treated you like a business partner, and you reciprocated." After then, it became silent. No more donuts, no more lectures. When they departed, they left the folder on the table. I didn't bother to pick it up at all. I simply sat there breathing for the first time like a guy who had a memory of his identity before he became someone else's fallback option. I gave them the documents the next day. Dana took up residence in the guest room. No more eating meals together, no more promises of a wonderful night. Only the sound of doors closing and quiet. The type of quiet that no longer hurts. It only validates your pre-existing knowledge. I took my time with everything. No shouting, no showmanship. Like a person dragging their arm out of quicksand, I just began to untangle myself, deliberately and slowly, without creating a scene. I started by getting a divorce, silently. She did not argue. She was probably too ashamed to attempt. Before the marriage ended, I made care to incorporate a provision safeguarding all financial and company assets. Our joint savings account was likewise frozen by me. It was not drained by her. I believe she was aware that I would bury her in court records and facts if she attempted. Jordan, too. In less than a week, he moved out, back to the flat of his actual father. Walk up with 2 bedrooms, no money, no business contacts. 2 mature guys attempting to coexist in an area that was not designed with their egos in mind. I've heard that the store deleted its social media accounts. Kick's vault was tagged as permanently closed on Google Maps. 2 weeks later, the landlord replaced the placard and closed the doors. That $90,000 too. I didn't immediately receive it back. However, this is what I did. Obtain the provider that I put Jordan in touch with. Instead, I made an investment in a tiny logistics firm that is now directly under my control. Something scalable, lean, and unrelated to family strife. My divorce attorney also recommended a certified public accountant who discovered tax deductions I would not have otherwise been aware of. Because of the peace of mind and the unsuccessful company loss, I was able to recoup more than $15,000 from the IRS. Priceless. Since then, Dana has texted me once. Only one message. "I'm still baffled by why you did all that. It was something we could have resolved." I didn't respond because you can't truly understand what it means to be a parent or a spouse if you have to ask. Jordan hasn't gotten back to me. According to what I've heard, he's trying to start a new sneaker website while working part-time at an electronics retailer. How much money? Who knows? Perhaps Daniel made the decision to help out at last. Perhaps not. However, I sleep in a peaceful home, my personal area. No cold dinners, no false family guilt, and no falsehoods. Additionally, I framed the original LLC documents and have them on my wall like a prize every morning as I pass the folder. A reminder that loyalty is possible. You are capable of generosity. You are capable of love, but never to those who think you can be replaced. I wasn't his biological father. All right, I am not his stepfather either. Just a man who watched those he trusted and then pieced his life back together, set everything on fire. That concludes the tale. You must be one of us if you're still here. So feel free, press the subscribe button. Every day I release more chaos. And believe me, the story for tomorrow, this one is not quite as bad as it is.